on that note, if I could give advice to especially creatives that want to have their own business, surround yourself with accountants, lawyers, other entrepreneurs, people with business savvy that can help you along the way. Because unfortunately, with creators, we tend to think, "Ooh, I love this idea. Let's design a new collection," and not think of the feasibility of it and how are you. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the She Just Got Going podcast, a podcast about entrepreneurship and career advice. Today, I am joined by Carina Lowe. I'm one of the co founders of ERRE Fashion, and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. So, ERRE Fashion has been really making waves. I think one of the most exciting things I saw in the previous week was with South Africa, our Springboks playing against Wales, and you being able to dress one of the singers singing at the opening ceremony. And on top of that, just so many awards and accolades that you have won that we are going to talk about. So I'm very excited to be speaking to such, well acclaimed designers in the South African design space. So, Carina, thank you so much for joining me today. And yes, can you please just introduce yourself and what you are about with ERRE Fashion and how you started that?
Oh, thank you for the beautiful introduction. It's so lovely doing this podcast with you. I'm an avid podcast listener, so this is my first time on a podcast, so I'm very excited. So I'm one of the co-founders of ERRE Fashion. My design partner is Natasha, and we launched ERRE in 2013. And then I'm also the owner of Milner Fashion House. It's the property where our studio is located, but it's also a event space and a place where you can shoot beautiful photo shoots. And I have 2 guest bedrooms as well.
Yes, it definitely is a lovely space, Mama Fashion House. I had the honor and privilege of being able to work with your amazing brand and shooting in your wonderful space with the Rise models. And yeah, the work that came after that was absolutely beautiful and absolutely stunning. So thank you for actually involving me in that. And yeah, it was really an incredible experience to wear such amazing clothes. And I think talking about the clothes, so the main theme of all the designs that you create is power dressing, getting women to feel the sense of power when they wear your clothes. And can you talk a little more about that and the theme of the brand and your belief in power dressing for women?
When we launched the brand in 2013, we saw that there was you could call it a gap in the market where women in high positions couldn't really find clothing that suit their bodies. And then our tagline, Power Dressing
Mm,
Redefined, it's all about empowering women through the way you dress. And it seems so frivolous. People think fashion is just a frivolous thing. You wear clothing because you need to. But what people don't understand is the way you dress do
yeah.
influence the way you interact with other people and how people perceive you. So clothing can be used as a powerful tool to help you in business and in your own industry. And especially for entrepreneurs, it's really a tool you can use to empower yourself, make yourself look and feel amazing, and get clothing that fits your specific
Mm.
body type. Yet you subtly influence your interactions with other people, and you can really use it to your advantage.
That is so true and so amazing that you were able, to actually see that that was a gap in the market and cater to that. And so, did you always know you wanted to become a fashion designer? And how did you get into fashion?
So I knew from age 4 that wanted to be a fashion designer, and by age 8, I was like, yes, I definitely want to be a fashion designer. And I told my mother and father that, and they were like, "Oh my word, she's never going to get a job. It's a
Mm,
difficult industry." Uh, I
yeah.
think I was influenced mostly by my mother and my sister. My mother used to do a lot of sewing when she was younger while I was growing up. And then, especially with pattern drafting, that's still my favorite thing about what I do today is over holidays, my mother would entertain me by helping me draft patterns for clothing that I would then try and stitch with her help.
Oh,
And then
wow.
my sister used to also during holidays, as you can hear, we didn't really go on holiday. It's more like working holidays. Um, my sister dragged me when I was 8 years old. She dragged me with her to the library, and I remember going to the kiddies book section and feeling bored. And I went to find my sister because she's 10 years older than me, and I was like, being this annoying little girl with my sister, and she said, "Stop annoying me. I know you feel you're too old for the kiddies books, so just read this." And she threw a Vogue into my hands. So I
Oh,
took that Vogue magazine and started paging through it, and it was like, "Oh, this is where I need to be," type of moment.
yes. Wow. Wow. And, when I see your designs, they're so unique, from the colors to the different types of shapes and designs you put together. And so, what inspires your creative process when you design?
Well, it's very organic, and me and Natasha work together on it, but with our own, you could say, design specialities. I'm an obsessive researcher, so any collection starts with a lot of research, and then research specifically on what I feel our clients would want. So I first look at our clients.
Yeah.
Our clients are our inspiration. We design
Mm,
according to what I see they want and their personalities. And then we start developing the collection from the starting point of the client. But then I start looking at different shapes or colors or different influences every season. I mean, and it's as varied as the collection that you modeled in was inspired by our garden simply. But previous collections were inspired, for example, by our travels to the Ivory Coast, to Germany. So it depends on what's happening that year. But as you can see, we always work in
mm,
bold colors or black. We don't do any prints. And the reason for that is we focus on the surface texture or technique and then the silhouette and the construction of the clothing instead of having prints.
yes, yes. And it's so important that you actually do focus on the client and exactly what would work for them. I know one of the clients you actually did work with was the Princess of, or Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Monaco. And how did that opportunity come about? And what was that experience like?
It was a interesting. It was very interesting the way we met her. One of my friends that studied fashion with me, but he was a bit younger. He became a stylist, and he phoned me and said, "Listen, yeah, I need to source garments for a photo shoot for Rosa magazine, but I can't tell you who the celebrity is. It's top secret." And I'm like, "Sure, I trust you. Come and source clothing for the shoot." And he came and he sourced like our whole studio. I was like, "Oh my word, what's he doing?" Because he took like 30 garments from here. And then the day of the shoot, he phones us and he's like, "Listen, yeah, I'm going to give out the secret now. The person we're shooting is Princess Charlene, and she desperately wants to meet you guys. Come to Joburg." So apparently, what happened was,
Wow.
and we heard this from the makeup artist and the hairstylist afterwards, is they had over 200 garments there for her to wear for this photo shoot. But she kept on trying outfits, and also international brands, not just local brands.
Yeah.
And the only garments that fit her were ours. Because remember, she used to be an Olympic swimmer, Olympic gold medalist for South Africa. So
Yeah.
she's tall and she's built like a swimmer, broad shoulders, long legs, and none of the sample garments fit her because samples are made for very skinny models. And our samples are made for one of our house models. Her name is Anele. Anele is 1.89 tall, and she's actually got
Wow.
ribs and shoulders and curves. So apparently, the
Yeah.
clothing just fit Princess Charlene very well. And it was a big surprise because a week later, we got a phone call from a sister in law saying she's flying you down to Monaco. So we flew down to Monaco for 2 weeks, visited Princess Charlene in the palace, in her dressing room. She took us through her whole closet, like she has quite a few closets, but when she opened a closet door, and there was Chanel, Valentino garments hanging there, and then Air garments next to it. So that was pretty awesome.
Yes, I can imagine. And yeah, in terms of actually getting your brand out there, because I know, with a lot of South African designers, the pinnacle of your career is obviously getting opportunities like that and being invited to different shows and events. And how do you feel, you've been able to build your brand and get the name Air Fashion out there?
One of the most important building blocks that we used to build our brand and to get awareness was to participate in South African Fashion Week. We are very loyal towards South African Fashion Week because they've helped us a lot. So
Hmm.
I would definitely give advice if you're a startup fashion brand is to show at Fashion Week because that's your foot in the door. And from then there on, you get to meet stylists who source for magazine shoots and you get to meet people from the media who get your name out there. Of course, Instagram is a useful tool, but I mean, all of us know, it's such a busy space. To really market your brand digitally is difficult now. So you need to really stand out. And the way to do that still in fashion is with fashion weeks.
Yes, yes. And how does it work with getting involved in the fashion weeks? Do you get invited? Because I know Air Fashion has been invited to actually not even just the local fashion weeks, but even international ones. So how does it work with getting your foot in the door with Fashion Week?
As a young brand, you have to apply and you get, for example, with SA Fashion Week, Lucilla Boyson, the owner and CEO of SA Fashion Week, will choose the designer. So you have to send in portfolios and things like that. But the uh, easiest way to do it is actually to enter the many competitions that SA Fashion Week have for both women's wear and menswear, because that's really your opportunity to show at a local fashion week. And once you've showed at quite a few local fashion weeks, then hopefully you get invited to international shows as well.
Yes, yes. And what do you think, is what makes South African designers' designs unique? I know every single South African designer has very different designs from one another, and the designs are very unique. But I know that, it does tend to get a lot of attention internationally. And yeah, what has it been like for you being a South African fashion designer? And do you feel like the South African fashion industry encourages more up and coming designers?
The South African industry definitely encourages up and coming designers. And I must tell you just now and to the audience and whoever's listening to this that South African fashion is fantastic. We have brilliant designers. I must say, every time when we go overseas, we went to Berlin Fashion Week, for example. I've been to London. Then we were in Paris now last year. I come back and I feel so blessed because we really have great designers here. We should never step back and think that, especially European brands, are better than us. The only difference is European brands like Dior and so forth have been going for years and years, whereas our fashion industry is still very young, and that's why we have so many up and coming fashion designers. Uh, Designers such as Tebi Magugu, who won the Louis Vuitton Marie Hennessy Prize in 2019. He really especially paved the way for the rest of us because suddenly the international market is looking towards South Africa for ideas. And then,
Mm,
just in terms of how we differ, besides the obvious that most South African brands use a lot of print, is our designs tend to be more bold and colorful. And we also, as South Africans, wear more colorful clothing in general. When you
yes.
walk in the streets of Paris, it's actually quite boring to see how many people are just dressed in black, like I am now. And the prints are very mediocre and boring. And then when you get to South Africa, it's this color explosion. And I think that's a recurring theme in the rest of Africa as well, because I saw that in Nigeria, Ghana, and the Ivory Coast as well, as just explosion of beautiful color and prints. So that African aesthetic is really interesting and special. And it's not something that a foreign brand can really copy because they don't live here, they don't understand our market. Um, that's when people always ask us, do we want to export to other countries? And I'm like, you know what? No, I want to dress South Africans because the foreign market do not understand our market because they don't live here, number one. And they don't understand that we have such a variety of people and body shapes in South Africa. So I feel very blessed to be a South African designer based in South Africa because we have a wonderful market here and a wonderful history of dressing up that I don't think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, that is so true. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm also someone who really feels very passionately about our country and what we have to offer, from our beautiful landscapes to our people and our food. And like you said, our fashion as well. And
Mm,
it's so amazing that, you can highlight and celebrate what makes our fashion different and how it's
mm.
not just made by South Africans, but also really for South Africans. And, the rest of the world has also shown great appreciation for that. And so, in terms of all the projects you have worked on, because you've worked on many exciting projects, which one would you say was one of your favorite projects to work on?
Mm. Like you said, there's so many. I think every project is unique and different. I guess this will spring to mind. Like first thing is the project we did for Paris Fashion Week, because we collaborated a lot with our fellow designers like Roman Hunt and Jacques Bam, and I think that's just one of my favorite things. Is doesn't matter what the project is, as long as we're collaborating with our designer buddies, then I'm super happy, and it's going to be an awesome project.
Yes. And that sort of leads into my next question. You might have answered it, but what would you say is your favorite thing about what you get to do as a designer?
I must confess, I love everything I do. I might highlight a few things I don't like to do, like admin and so forth, but I think that's obvious. My favorite thing is drafting patterns. If I could just do that the whole day, then I'm happy. Of course, I love designing, but that goes without saying. But that's almost like the the cream on the top is designing, and that happens 1% of the time, and usually at odd hours and in the evenings. It's not part of my 8 to 7 working day, but pattern drafting is, and I love doing that. I I'm not great at public speaking. A lot of other designers are very good at promoting themselves. They become almost like celebrities in themselves, not just their brand. If you think of local brands like Richmond Nishi or Gert-Jan Coetzee, they are as well known as their brands. They're celebrities. Whereas me and Natasha are a bit more shy and tend to be more behind the scenes. And that's
Mm.
something that I think has held us back a bit. So that's the difficult part for me.
Yes, and so yeah, that also leads into the next few questions. So, the two main questions we ask on the podcast is what was one piece of advice you would have actually given your younger self before you got started? And the second one is, what was one of your biggest fears or obstacles that you had to overcome and how you overcame it? And it's not to put a focus on fear or obstacles or negative things, but really just to show people how we all have our struggles. We've all had to overcome them and really just inspire one another by how we have overcome things. So, yes, whichever question you want to answer first, you are more than welcome to.
I've thought about this a lot, the question of what would I tell my younger self. So let's go with the age of 18. Yo, if I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self, yo, I would tell her, believe in yourself. Wow. It felt like it took me a long time to really, truly believe in myself. Although I've always known what I wanted to do. Since I was a small child, I knew I wanted to be a fashion designer. I didn't really believe in myself. I don't know if that makes sense to you. There
Mm,
was always the sense of imposter syndrome that um, I'm not good enough, not this, not this. And instead of developing my own voice and own design signature, I felt scared and lost for a long time. And only when I got older and I started lecturing, I started gaining the confidence to really do what I want to do. So yeah, I would tell young Carina, listen here, stop being so disbelieving. Just trust yourself and trust your own judgment, because I've
mm,
found over history my judgment is always accurate, but I didn't trust my own judgment. That's the problem. I always thought that I would rather listen to other people. So I've learned to trust my own inner voice, because I do a lot of research that I base it on. I don't just come up with stuff. So definitely trust yourself. And then your other question was that um,
yes. So, what was one of your biggest fears or obstacles that you had to overcome and how did you overcome it?
just getting started. It's the I think it's for a lot of people like this. I don't know if it's more a creative brain thing, but it's the most difficult. I found that the most difficult thing with a business or a project or a concept is just to get started. Once you get started, then you get into the roll of things and it gets easier. Um, I must say, I've always been found it very difficult where I would do research, conceptualize, but there won't happen anything out of it because I'm too scared to start. So what I learned was that the best thing to do is to collaborate with people that also want to do it, and then you force yourself into a situation where you don't have a choice. You must do it.
Yeah.
That's also part of the reason why I partnered with Natasha, because we hold each other accountable. And I mean, the moment we decide we're going to do this brand, I employed um, one of our seamstresses that are still with us. And that feeling of getting up and knowing that somebody else is now your responsibility. If you don't perform, she doesn't get paid. That was the biggest motivator of my life. But to start it off is very, very challenging. Even with my second business, ERRE Fashion House, I've seen that just to get it started and off the ground feels like it takes forever. It's so difficult, but once it gets going, then it becomes easier. And um, so just to push through that initial phase of a business and to have patience and consistency and perseverance to keep on going, even though it looks like it's failing at this point. So I must say, I mean, me and Natasha as well with ERRE, we entered a lot of competitions that we didn't win. We've been going for quite a few years where it felt like we're not growing, we're not getting there fast enough. And that perseverance to keep on going, keep on trying, learn from your mistakes, and just to not give up will always have benefits. You will always reap the benefits.
Yes, and that's so inspiring because I am a firm believer that there is so much entrepreneurial talent in South Africa. And funny enough, so many people,
Mm,
either start and stop or don't even start because of that initial fear or that initial difficulty of just getting started or
mm,
starting but then wanting to give up
mm,
because, maybe you don't see that progress right away. And I mean, imagine what would have happened if you did give
mm,
up. All these incredible opportunities that have followed might not have
mm.
ever happened. So it's always so crazy to think,
Exactly.
people that have done amazing things, were so close to giving up. But how did you actually meet Natasha?
We met when we were both fashion design lecturers. So um,
Oh,
before Air existed, we both had our separate brands. But I was doing a men's tailored suits, and she was doing wedding dresses and evening dresses. And then we were part-time lecturers. So she was the sewing lecturer, and I was the pattern drafting lecturer. And with those two subjects, you always have to communicate with that lecturer and make sure that all the students are on par. So we started talking in between classes, and I was like, man, I love flat pattern drafting and I love tailoring. And she's like, man, I love draping and evening wear. And we were like, we're actually the opposites of each other. Um, Imagine we combined our skills. It would be mind blowingly insane. And so we started doing sewing together and working together. And that's still how we work. Not one design of Air is either mine or hers. It's such a mixture. And I believe that's where the magic lies with our designs, is because we both have different processes that complement each other. So I'm very glad I met Natasha.
yes, yes. And I actually didn't know you were lecturers. I know I've seen that you offer, some courses, some fashion courses on the website. And
Mm.
now it makes sense. I mean, you have then a teaching gift, but are those courses available to everyone? What are they about and how can people actually, sign up for one if they can?
Mm. Yeah, so it's purely me self-indulging because I miss lecturing a lot. Obviously, um, I lectured for over 10 years, and then it was 20. The last time I lectured was in 2018, and that was with SA Fashion Week just for 2 weeks. So
Wow.
I miss it. It's lots of fun because I always tell my students that I learn more than they do, quite frankly. Um, because each person has a different idea or a different vision. So I learn more than they do, I believe. And with these courses, I really aim it at everybody. Anybody that's not just a fashion student or somebody that wants to become a fashion designer or own a fashion business. It's part of the fun is having people that's just interested. They might want to learn how to sew, or they've always wondered how do you design a fashion collection, or that is just interested, and to see how people enjoy it is so much fun. So my students thus far this year has been as varied as a 16-year-old to an 80-year-old who just wanted to learn how to draft patterns, and it was so much fun. So it's definitely aimed at people who doesn't need to have any background, any art or creative background. And the purpose for this is I want to share the joy of fashion. I don't think, especially people that don't know a lot about fashion, once they do a class with me, they get more interested. So because it's really fascinating how
Yeah.
fashion works and how to cut patterns and everything. So it's also a diabolical way for me to teach the consumer about the value of supporting local, to
Yeah.
so that people understand that your clothing doesn't just magically overnight appear into a Zara. Somebody somewhere is stitching that clothing, um, and somebody somewhere might not be getting enough money or a fair pay. So the moment somebody who does my course has to go from measuring themselves, drafting the pattern, cutting the cloth, and stitching it, they realize how long it takes. And I think that creates a more of appreciation for clothing in general and for quality clothing, so that you can see, wow, this is this is the amount of time and skill and labor that goes into a beautifully made coat. Now I understand why it costs what it costs. So it's also
Mm.
about educating the consumer on the value of good quality fashion as opposed to mass produced fashion.
Yes, yeah. And it's so important that we actually do understand that because a lot of us, I think it's very easy to not really appreciate, the art of fashion because we're in an age where a lot of mass fashion is produced to the point where now even the topic of sustainable fashion has come up because we can't just keep making new things. The concept of recycling has even had to come in. So many things are really mass produced and we're seeing new completely different things every single day and we actually forget how much goes into that article of clothing that a designer makes themselves, and also the importance of
Mm,
supporting local. So yeah, I love the
mm,
initiative Local is Lacquer, which was pretty much government's way of telling us to support local. But you don't even have to feel like, oh, I have to support local. You want to because there really is so much incredible talent
mm.
here. And so, yeah, you did mention that, people ask you if you ever want to import your designs overseas. So at the moment, are your designs only available for purchase in South Africa?
We've had a few orders from international buyers. The last one was in California, I think. So over foreigners do order, but we don't really market for them. So it's people that accidentally stumble upon us. But I heard
Yeah.
comments from South Africans where they said that when they view our brand on Instagram, they all thought that we were based in Paris or something, which is so funny. That's why I changed our description to based in South Africa. Um,
Yes, yes. It's so true. I mean, I don't know who's in charge of the social media and branding, but they do a very good job on the page. Everything just looked so high fashion and you can really see you have such an creative eye for the things that you make because really it's like I said, it's very unique and bright and colorful and I've never actually seen anything like that before. So, yeah, the page is absolutely stunning. And I know in the beginning of the video, I will normally put photos of your work and everything. So I'm sure everyone can agree. And yeah, actually, on that note, for people who are listening at the moment, the episodes are available on YouTube as well. So if you actually want to see the face behind the voice and also, what Build a Fashion House and ERRE Fashion is about, then you'll get to see a little bit more of that on the YouTube episode. So yes, so back to the questions is so did you ever have, a mentor along this journey?
quite a few. I think everybody that I've ever dealt with was a mentor for me. Um, one of my lecturers, after I studied fashion design at Pretoria Technikon before it was TUT. So by the time I finished my degree, it felt like I don't know enough yet. But that was specifically when it comes to tailoring and pattern drafting. Um, so a lecturer of mine sort of took me underneath her wing, and she, for another whole year, she taught me more the things I had questions about after I finished studying. So that was incredible. One of my best friends is not in fashion; he's a business rescue practitioner, and we were school friends already years ago. And his sense of business and his advice has been incredible. And I must say, on
Mm,
that note, if I could give advice to especially creatives that want to have their own business, surround yourself with accountants, lawyers, other entrepreneurs, people with business savvy that can help you along the way. Because unfortunately, with creatives, we
yeah.
tend to think, ooh, I love this idea. Let's design a new collection and not think of the feasibility of it and how are you, yeah, just the business aspect of it. You really need a business mentor.
Yes, yeah. I actually, so I tutor English online actually. So one of my students is
Interesting.
interested in fashion design. Actually, when I told her you might be on the podcast, she was incredibly excited about it. So she's very excited for this episode. But yeah, she actually is signing up for a program. So she's actually from Hungary. So she was signing up for a program that is fashion design, but also incorporates business. And I thought to myself, it's really
Oh,
important to
fantastic.
see now programs going that way because yeah, I mean, like you said, you start studying and you just think it's the fashion that you're going to be doing, but there's so much more involved. And so, yeah, would you say that was the thing that sort of surprised you the most when you got into fashion was just all the other things you needed to know as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's so. Before I studied fashion, obviously I knew I would have to. I mean, the to be a successful fashion designer, you need to sell. If you're not selling anything, it means you're not a good designer. But the marketing aspect behind it and running a business was a big surprise. And still, if accountant shows me numbers on a piece of paper and this is our financial statement of 2021, for example, I sort of feel like crying every time. But I also know that to run a successful business, you need to know what's happening in your finances 24/7. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And as a creative, you've got this brilliant idea for a design, and you go out and you're like, oh, I love this fabric. Oh no, but it's 2,000 rands a meter. But I'm gonna buy it because I love it so much, And in the end, you sit with meters and meters of fabric that you still need to sew, and that's where all your capital is lying, is underneath your cutting table. And for a business, somebody who knows how to run a business, to come and point it out to you that, listen, yeah, this is why it looks like your cash flow doesn't look that great, because you keep on buying beautiful fabrics. You buy too much. To get that reality check isn't always nice, but it's valuable. And in the end, at the end of the day, it becomes part of the design challenge as well. As, okay, this season, this is your budget for fabric. Don't go over that. Don't overthink it. Don't overspend, but design within that box. And that's actually the
Mm,
fun part, which I didn't think I would enjoy, but now it's the most fun for me, is designing already with end prizes in mind and with specific price brackets. So I'm not just designing all these crazy outfits. I'm designing with a very specific price bracket in mind, and that's something that surprised me, but I actually enjoy today.
yes, yes. Wow. And um yeah, my next question is so, where to now for your businesses? Any exciting things you have planned in the future? Yeah, where to from now?
Well, we're looking forward to Women's Month in August. We're going to brainstorm this week exactly what we're going to do. But um, one of the, sorry, I'm answering a previous question again, but it ties in with my answer. Yeah, one of our biggest challenges still is to really convey to our audience and to our clientele what we mean by power dressing. And we really want to start telling that story this August. in the form of uh, small workshops and things like that on how to power dress.
Mm.
So August, Women's Month, is very important for us now in the near future. Um, Looking beyond that, we desperately want to work more with Maori South Africa. We've worked with them in the past, but we want to do more knitwear because it's a local sustainable fiber. And then next year, we will be celebrating our 10th anniversary, 10-year birthday for Air. So we want to do a big fashion show in the Cape Winelands. We already have sponsors and everything. So we're looking forward to that. And then a trip to London. London is in the cards as well. But I've been like, um, postponing is not the right word. I think it's wisest to maybe do that next year, not this year, since the economy is unstable now, and to just hold that thought until next year and see
Yeah.
what's happening worldwide.
Yes, yes. That all sounds so, so exciting. And I know like the 10 years is not here yet, but congratulations on, the brand growing how it has and, reaching 10 years of everything that you've been doing. That's really amazing. And yeah, I think just before we close, you said you're going to spend a lot more time really describing this concept of power dressing. And yeah, you really hit the nail on the head in the beginning of saying that, how you show up in a space and really controlling how you look can really have such an influence on just how you feel about yourself and how other people perceive you. But yeah, can you end off with just, telling us about why it's important to you, the concept of power dressing and what it means for women?
The concept is important in the sense that, I mean, I've heard from our clients, and especially with photo shoots, and I know for myself that if I'm dressed in the way in which I want to convey a message, it really helps. It makes a huge difference. So obviously, power dressing starts with yourself and how you feel. But then in the end, without having to say a word, to see how people react differently towards you. And I've got so many stories that's funny and interesting on how, uh, I mean, as you probably have noticed by now, I'm a bit shy and I'm not that uh, well versed and spoken and nervous and this and this. And to see how, for me, it works without me having to say a word, how I have the ability
Yeah.
to scare people, to intimidate people, to be more approachable, to influence, to really negotiate the space without having to say a word. That is very powerful. And like I said in the beginning of this podcast, that's why I really believe fashion is a tool that you can use uh, to your benefit. And to fashion is such a joy. It brings joy to people. And power dressing is just another way of using fashion to live the life you want to live without without any fear. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more actually with that statement, especially how you related it back to yourself with being someone that maybe doesn't always put themselves out there, how your clothes can do that for you. And so Karina, thank you so, so much for being on the podcast today. I have enjoyed it so much and yeah, all the questions and everything you've shared. And thank you, for being such a good ambassador, for our country in the fashion space and not giving up and continuing to, push the boundaries, pursue your dreams, and, actually fly the flag high for us as well. And so I wish you even more success on the journey. And yeah, I will put down the socials and everything again for everyone to also follow along with what you guys are busy with. And yes, thank you once again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. Thanks.
Yes. So yeah, everyone, that is the end of today's episode. So yeah, please do follow along on the She Just Got Going Instagram page, also on the YouTube channel on the different platforms, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And yeah, thank you for tuning in again for another episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and see you next time.